always keen to immediately believe Jitsi in terms of making sure that we're actually streaming live to YouTube. So I'm kind of in the process of doing that right now. I suppose I should let people know who I am, seeing as how I'm not the person that you usually expect. Doug Whitfield is traveling, and he has agreed to allow Brother Omar, Willie, and I to take over. Omar of Net Label Day, as some of you might have seen from the interview that he had with Doug in the episode from 2 weeks ago, is currently getting things set up in terms of tech. So he wanted me to start up things in the meantime. So in the immortal words of the Baltimore residents as captured in the critically acclaimed TV series The Wire, Omar coming. Really, don't worry. On the way. I hear a laugh. I hear a laugh, which tells me that he's in the green room.
Pretty close. Getting there.
Okay. Not a problem. I do have some videos here. So I think what I might do is just copy one of those links in and get that going so that we can entertain the folks who might be live and those who catch this after with a little bit of music and some visuals to go along with it, since that's occasionally what happens on here sometimes. Mm. Let us start things off with Close Counters, a wonderful DJ remix and production duo based in Australia. And I believe this is going to be the title cut from their album Sola Costa. Checked out the video the other day, and I thought to myself, this would be a good one to kick things off with when we got this going. So yeah, Omar and Jason, aka Macedonia Takeover. Big shout out to Doug for allowing this one to go down for this time around for the newly renamed Friends of CC Music YouTube page. Happy Black History Month, kids. Let's go. video goes so many places that we didn't expect it to. As we get ourselves back into the video things, as you might have guessed, tech detective. So we are rolling with the punches here as best as possible. On my side as well as Omar's side, it's like the technology universe saw us coming long before this this time got here. At any rate, that is, or rather, that was Solar Coaster. Settle Cut. Same album, the album of the same name, rather, from Close Encounters out of Australia. There he is. There's his lovely face. Close Encounters is fun. If anybody is curious after that song and that video, head over to the Bandcamp page, closecounters.bandcamp.com. Not everything that they have to offer is under a CC license, but the stuff that is choice. The stuff that is absolutely top tier. Definitely some stuff to shake your tail feather to as the weather gets warmer. And seeing as how they do some pretty incredible DJ sets, they have some nice little edits up on their Bandcamp page for the DJs out there. One of them being an absolutely beautiful rework of Andre 3000's Prototype. Another one being house and broken beat remixes of Lucienne by A Tribe Called Quest. So some things to consider. Anybody who's uninitiated to how things go down around, you might want to backtrack about 2 or 3 episodes and dip your toes into some music, some of the albums, some of the artists, some of the tracks that have been nominated for the 2024 CC Community Music Awards, and get an idea of what goes on under the underground, as some say, in regards to music. And there's a lot there. There's a lot of incredible things there. So always good to check out some of the things happening on the Creative Commons license side of things. As we still try to figure some things out, I think what we're going to do is hop into another one real quick. Let's go to an artist that's got tons and tons of music over on the Free Music Archive. Ketsa. Shout out to Ryan Bearded. And plays a lot of Ketsa tunes on his show, that show, rhino.cc on the web, for anyone not already. Big shouts to Rhino. Let's get into a song and a video from Ketsa, simply entitled Hum. And then maybe the gods of the tech universe will be nice enough, at least for a couple of minutes, to let bandwidth and other tech things be what they need to be in order for Omar and I to chop it up a little bit. And in the meantime, let's check this vid. Ketsa by Hum. a beautiful tune. Not Ketsa by Hum, as I said right before it started. Hum by Ketsa. Again, a ton of music over on the Free Music Archive, and he might have even been interviewed on the FMA Insiders podcast, but don't quote me on that. How we doing on your end, Omar?
I think I got sound. Okay.
Ooh.
I'm still as homely as ever, so that's good. Yeah. I got most of the connection. I'm a little bit lagged, but that's okay.
Yeah, man. Tech be teching out here.
Oh yeah. Technique macht frei, man. That's what we do. It's written over our offices. How y'all doing out there?
Doing okay, man. Can't complain. Doing all right. During the time of the sort of CC Music Summit, my wife, daughter, and I were up in Buffalo, New York. She was checking out the SUNY Buffalo campus.
Nice.
My daughter's in her senior years. She was heading up there to audition for the BFA musical theater program, which we recently heard that she has been accepted to. So respect to her. Yeah. So we were up there and had to spend an extra day, and as we did, actually sat down with the video of that summit, and I gotta be honest, I was riveted. I was riveted to the point of where I actually took down some notes so that I could be properly prepared for whatever goes down on the 7th of April. I want to be a part of that.
Well, I'm hoping to be part of it too. I just have no idea what part. Probably the hindquarters. That's what I'm thinking. It's all good. No. Today, I guess I play court jester, so I'm allow you to be the king, brother.
Now, see, I was thinking I was the town crier.
Oh, town crier works too. We got the blue collar.
Town crier. I'm only going by some of the notes that I took during that summit, where they really kind of wanted to form. One of the things that they talked about was bringing back the idea or the concept of the online town square.
Yeah.
Where CC Music was concerned, and where there's a town square, there ought to be a town crier. And I think prior to really immersing myself in all things CC Music, but just having a podcast where I wanted to represent independent and positive music, I kind of took the role of the town crier, wanting to dive into the areas of music that we were able to share that maybe not into, or even once they got there, maybe they found so overwhelming that they just didn't know where to start.
Sure.
We're the people who lead the horses to water,
I'd like to think they're at least as noble as the Lipizzan or Stallions or something like that. So maybe if we can't lead them to water, maybe we can drive them to drink.
Yeah.
Either works. Yeah, it's all good.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Oh no, that was all I had to add there. It's all yours.
All right. One of the things that I was thinking about preparing for this is, well, actually, two questions. I'll start off with the one that I'm going to save, because really, it's a best lead in. As far as Net Label Day is concerned, what gave you the impetus to even take such a project on? Oof. Because there's probably more going into that than I can even begin to imagine.
Yeah, it's a royal PITA, definitely. The main impetus was that Manuel was done with it, and he was closing up Mist. Records at the time, his own that label, and pretty much I had to make a decision about whether or not I wanted it to go away. And
Hmm.
Rhino and I have had this conversation before, but as he says in every single one of his shows, if something you like goes away and you don't support it, it's your fault, right?
Yep.
And that's the thing
Yep.
that we need to get across to people. It's your responsibility to make people feel like they're artists every so often. I know that sounds like it's jive, but it's not. I remember watching Jackie McLean on Mars documentary ages ago, and he was talking about when he landed in Paris, after being chased out of the United States for various reasons. And he got
Hmm.
to the airport, and the passport agent looked at his passport, opened it up, and said, "Ah, jazz musician, artiste." And it made him feel really good. And he says, "Yeah, of course it did." And I know y'all out there don't think we need to be told once in a while that we're artists. Yeah, but actually we do. And
Hmm.
we have to be told that our work is important, especially when it's really big, exhausting projects like the FMA or Net Label Day or CC Mixter or take your pick. There's a whole string of them out there that are massive, massive, multinational, international, multidimensional sort of projects out there. And they all need help. And so I figured, well, this is the time to put up or shut up. So I inherited this from Manuel. And
Hmm.
man, did I know what I was getting into? Only partially, but it's all good.
That thing about you, the thing that you recently said about the artist is so true, because what is true for the heads that choose to share their work under these sharing licenses is every bit as true for someone of Erykah Badu's stature when she told the audience, keep in mind that I'm an artist and I am sensitive about my shit.
Oh, it's true. And it's not just that you're sensitive, it's that especially when it's a performing art, right? Like music, which has been difficult to keep that sort of reputation over the last 4 years for a lot of different reasons, right? But it's still performing art and it still requires an audience. In fact, that's the whole point. I've been working on this piece about the King Crimson documentary. One of the things Robert Fripp says in there is that music is, music is the form of silence, right? That's the way that we communicate silence to each other so that we can all think and hear and meditate and be in touch with our thoughts. And I think, a lot of people think that's really fancy, but it's not. It's actually exactly what it is. It's the same way we use words. We use words so that we provoke thoughts in other people, right? The words are this sort of the form of silence in that sense, if you will, right? They're the sketch of meaning. And so when we don't feel like anything is connecting and we're only talking to ourselves or we're only writing for ourselves, like, yeah, that'll carry you just so far, right? But
Yeah.
eventually you're going
Yeah.
to have to feel like you're part of the outside world and that you mean something to the outside world and that what you do matters. And I think we tend to forget that in a kind of online world where there's not really clear boundaries and there's, more importantly, not really clear identity. Right.
Hmm.
So it's difficult to tell when you listen to something online that it actually required somebody's labor. And then it's not just the labor, it's that required somebody's study and somebody's personality and somebody's effort. And all of those things come together in this blip on Spotify that suddenly disappears and you go, oh, that was cool. That must have been automatically AI generated like everything else in my life. Right. But of course it wasn't. It was a human being that did that for a reason, and they were trying
Yeah.
to reach you. And I think we forget that this is a very human thing when so much of our participation is online.
Yeah. I mean, just leading out of that, it's probably no surprise then in watching those who participated in this CC Music Summit, in watching the conversation that was a one-on-one between you and Doug, that it seems as if 2024 is the year that we strive to find new ways to emphasize the community in this thing called Creative Commons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think after the last, well, I think after March of 2020, everything kind of broke a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And it broke online for a lot of different reasons, but I think online is just a representation in that sense of real space. And I think a lot of folks felt really isolated and
Mhm.
really not part of any community whatsoever. And so the strange thing is that trying to fill that time with online stuff only lasted just so long. You could see after about 3 or 4 months when we were into quarantine, people were like, well, I've done all my binge watching and now I really, really want to go out to the movies, or, I really, really want to go out to a show. Like, yeah, of course you do, because you need human beings,
Yeah.
and human beings is what this is all about. And
Mhm.
with the thing Doug and I were talking about with platforms, the problem is that platforms are less and less human, right? And more automated and more algorithmic, based on God only knows what machine learning has been fed into their nonsensical algorithm these days, right? And that's not the kind of human connection we're looking for, but at the same time, it's our vehicle. We're stuck in a sense with all these platforms in our way. And so the way that we have to respond as artists and as listeners and as a society is we got to either completely obliterate the platforms, which we know is not going to happen, or we have to make the platforms work for us insofar as that's possible. And so we find the platforms that are most likely to do that originally, and we try to whip them into shape. And if they won't do it, then we'll find somebody a little less likely with a little more force next time, right?
Mm. Wow.
I know, just
I
dropping
think
bombs here.
yeah, yeah. Don't front on my man Omar. He got bars. He got bars. What you gotta backtrack 2 episodes to see how it all went down on that one-on-one to to really get into the heart of the matter.
Hmm.
And where we're in terms of everything that we're talking about right now, I think both pre and post pandemic, anytime you use synthetic tools to make organic connections, it's gonna feel a little strange.
Oh
And
yeah.
and so that's what we've been doing, before everything broke down, but especially after. There are these ripple effects that people simply aren't willing to acknowledge or
Hmm.
take notice of, particularly in terms of how those ripple effects show up in our children. And I think about them being this first generation of remote learning, of online learning, of not being able to get up with each other in the cafeterias and by the locker rooms and so many other different places where they were congregate in
Hmm.
terms of what school life for them was like, and then trying to return to it. There's only so much emotion, so much true organic connection that they can make, with their thumbs on a phone.
Yeah.
And so they're having to relearn this whole way of give and take as far as connecting is concerned. I think about the times that when my daughter was younger, in another room there would be a crash and then a silence and then those 2 words, "I'm okay."
I know those 2 words well.
Yeah, so you think about that, right? And then you think about everything that this younger generation has been through in terms of learning, in terms of not being able to verbalize everything that's been going on with them physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually in the years that have passed since the great disruption of 2020, right?
Mhm.
And then we put them back into these classrooms, expecting them to say, "I'm okay," when they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
It's
still
funny because
a
I
lot that
taught,
needs to happen.
you know,
Yeah,
oh,
you
I
know,
taught at
there's
Franklin High over that period, and I was teaching when the doors closed, right? And so everything was
mm,
kind of forced online, and it was tense. It was nerve wracking. And this is a school where it's 60% not not first language English speakers, right? So this is like the middle of the 98118 zip code, which is almost all immigrants and people who speak two languages, one at school, one at home, right? That kind of thing. And while it was bristly intense, I think that class held together and there was an amazing amount of attention in it. And we wound up in May, and everything was very exciting for us still. I think the second time I taught, a year and a half later, that was exactly not the case because we weren't emerging from a real life situation into a crisis. The crisis had already been established as the default, in a sense, right? And so, since there was no longer the anchor of having already had that experience of being in a classroom, of being with your fellow peers, instead you had people who are now 2.5 years into it, had no experience of being in an actual physical classroom, not the same way, even with hybrid classes, because it was always goodness only knows what schedule it is. Are you showing up for second period? Well, second period is off today. Maybe we'll go to it. It's just a completely broken mess in a lot of ways. And I think those kids were more distracted would be kind. I think the reality is they were terrified, but there's no voice for their terror, right?
mhm,
They kind of exist in this, they don't know what kind of world it is really. It's a world without real clear expectations. It's a world that doesn't push back. It's a world that waits for your feedback, but feedback is delayed, if it arrives at all, right?
yeah.
And then they carry this behavior also after they're seniors out into the real world, and that's another thing entirely, right? I had to step on a guy's foot at the Otoboke Beaver concert a couple days ago, and it was just, dude, after somebody has come out at a punk show and the singer has told you twice to stop throwing things on stage, unless
Mhm,
you are paying for everybody's ticket, behave your damned ass, right? Behave yourself. You are fucking it up for everybody else in the hall. And I finally told him that
mm,
after I stepped on his foot. I'd expected he would have figured it out, but he was just 21. He was just in a bar for the first time. It's like, yeah, you were one of those high school students, right? You were one of those seniors who graduated in the middle of the pandemic who didn't realize that this is not the way we behave in public. And so he
mhm,
missed the entire class of silent rules, right? The silent, unwritten rules that hold our communities together. And what we need to do is we need to re-examine those silent rules and make them patent. They've got to be absolutely clear to people what the hell they are right now. And then we can go and take them for granted a little bit further down the road. But right now, the need for clarity and exposition is extremely high.
hmm. Switching gears a little bit, but
Yeah.
still continuing in the in the in, in the form of wanting to make things clear and
Mhm.
having care and compassion to pay attention to the things that we love. Is curator really the dirty term that you and Doug think it is?
Well, as you could tell between me and Doug, we come at the dirty term from two different sides, right? You know,
Mm,
the way that I'm used to hearing it is completely different from the way he's used to hearing it, but it has the exact same negative connotation, which is a bunch of people jerking off, right? and, and I don't think that that's embedded in the term itself. I think that that's what we have seen from curatorial practice over the last
mm,
probably 12, 13 years, where it's just completely lazy to me, where somebody will throw together a little Pinterest board and say, bam, this is an exhibit I've curated. Like, yeah, bro, takes a little more to call yourself a curator than just owning a Pinterest. There need to be themes. There need to be reasons that things are tied together. There needs to be a certain amount of sequential discussion, right? There needs to be ideas advanced, not just simply, oh, this is what I like. That's not enough. It's a good start, but it's not enough.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, see, Doug comes
I
at it from
think
the other side, right? Where from Doug, he's used to it being a bunch of people in big fancy suits and ties and completely beyond the level of pretentiousness, right? And holding a, how shall I say, holding a military attitude almost toward their material, right? Where everything is
yeah.
guarded
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
knowledge is locked down. And they're the people who allow you to understand this oh so profound of which they are in charge, right? And yeah, that's obnoxious too. But I don't think that's necessarily embedded in curatorship. I think we've just had an awful lot of bad experiences with its practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen the wonder and the beauty of what happens when you have the right people in place to take on those curatorial duties. I think about those early days, at least that first decade of the Free Music Archive,
Oh yeah.
from the moment that it was in beta mode and I was jumping right in. I guess I was around what, 2008, 2009, right up until, right up until right up until Tribe of Noise, and actually the one before that, right
Yeah.
up until that point. Yeah. So we've seen we've seen the beauty, and the beauty, the wonder, the amazement, and just having people who are hungry to find what was next. And for those who were really uninitiated, be able to dig out some things in order to present to them that say, guess what? This is this is actually a name that you know. This is somebody who you actually mess with on an indie label, on your public access station, on your college station, on your favorite freeform station out here. But they've gotten a performance that FMU recorded, and they're offering it to all of us under this sharing license so that we can all get down with it. So I was able to take stuff like that back to people and let them know this is why I do what I do, so that I can find some familiar names to share with you in the hopes that it'll have you come back and find something else that you didn't already know, but might be your next new favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, those were incredible times in a lot of ways. We had an awful lot more attention being paid to independent music because the RIAA was so busy screwing things up, right? Whenever they would do something bad and shoot themselves in the foot, that wasn't enough. So they'd turn around and shoot themselves in the other foot, hoping that we didn't notice they were bleeding out. And so the indie artists, especially the ones who finally started to understand what copyright was about, and that it was in fact mostly keeping them prisoners, and keeping them outside of the place they actually wanted to be, rather than it being their ticket in as they were told. They started to respond really nicely from really 2007 to 2011. Those years are just incredibly brilliant. And there are a bunch of people who, through KEXP in my city, of course, and WFMU on the other coast, where they were having live performances, going, well, we were playing anyway. Why does this need a copyright? Why don't we just release this so that people can hear us? Yeah, we're a big name band, but we were going to play this in a concert that same evening for which people had already paid $35 a ticket. So what do we lose by giving something to people and allowing their interest to rise? Not only do we capture casual interest from listeners that way, but we also capture the faith of the diehards and go, oh yeah, that's why I like this guy. I like him so much because they're so dedicated to their fans and they do all this stuff for us. And, like Spock and the hippies would say in Star Trek, we reach, man, we reach, right? And that was extremely important. And that was extremely vital. And especially on the FMA, you had so many people that the folks at WFMU or the folks at FMA itself chose to say, hey, curate some sounds for us so that we can understand what's going on in this genre or on this label or the things that you do here. And it wasn't just in the United States, and it wasn't just in the English-speaking countries, which was really fantastic because so much of that world has remained hidden to a lot of us, unless of course they condescend to speak our tongue, right?
Right. Right.
And that promise, I think, is what we need to get back. We need to get back to that kind of curatorship where it's actually active and it's meant to show you something. It's not meant to hide something the way that Doug would say, and it's not meant to just, be a individual emotional barf exercise the way that I would say, right? But people to say, hey, if you are interested in fill in the blank, right? If you're interested in this, here is somebody who knows an awful lot about it, and these are the things that have been done in it and are happening right now, and this is all given to you so that you can develop your interest. And it's all done fairly, and it's all done for the sake of the art and for the sake of the audiences. And I'd love to have that attitude back.
I am of the same mind as you, so clearly it's going to be a team effort as we do what we can do, each of us, to bring back the community aspect of Creative Commons, and particularly as it pertains to this thing that we love so much called music. Speaking of which, do you have any videos to share?
Oh, goodness. Let me see. I might. I have a couple. Let me see if they'll actually work, shall we? I have a couple that were actually part of last year's Net Label Day because, I'm going to promote myself. But really, it's not promoting myself. It's promoting the musicians who are wonderful enough to help me carry out this exercise in madness every year.
Yes.
And so I've got a couple, I think. Let me see what I got. I think I got a Torsten piece here. That's actually the title track. Let me see if I can actually get it to play. This is the real trick, right?
Yep.
And so let's check it out. Oh, jinkies. Direct video link. I know I had it. See, this is always the problem. Yeah, too much tech. See, I've got all the files, but all the links are jacked up because I stupidly moved a hard drive and I didn't update the database.
Oh, dear.
So, yes, exactly. You know where I'm going with that one.
Yeah. I've been there too.
Yeah, and it was completely foolish, but I was in a hurry, and the deal. But I think here we go. I do believe I've got it covered for a change. Let's try this. Bam, son.
Nice.
Oh yeah, that's right. Come on now. Vom Nachttisch der Alarm trifft mich wie ein Schlag. Schnell schlag ich zurück. Dreh mich um zu dir, schau dich staunend an, rücke noch ein Stück. Näher an dich ran, streich ein Haar von deiner Stirn, du flüsterst meinen Namen. Guten Morgen, kannst du's glauben oder nicht? Jetzt haben wir die Wahl, Arbeit oder Liebe. Ha, ha. Arbeit oder Liebe. Ha, ha. Arbeit oder Liebe. Ha, ha. Arbeit Arbeit oder Liebe, ha, ha. Arbeit oder Liebe, ha, ha. Arbeit oder Liebe, ha, ha. Arbeit oder Liebe. Der Wind weht den Tag durchs Fenster rein zu uns, da fällt mir gestern Abend ein. Ich hatte 2, 3 Zeilen für einen guten Song, den könnte ich jetzt schreiben. Ich küsse deine Sommersprossen wach, vom Tisch rascheln Papiere. Das angefangene Lied, du hauchst mir was ins Ohr, ich wüsste gern, was das heißt. Arbeit oder Liebe, ha, ha. 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 Arbeit oder Liebe. Arbeit oder Liebe, ha, ha. 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 Arbeit oder
I love that song. So yeah, I got tunes finally. Torsten, he caught up with me on Mastodon, and I was like, "Hey, cool!" And he drops this album on me, sends me the disc because as it turned out, I'd already ordered it anyway from him. And he's like, "Oh, check it out! I included something else." So he gave me all the sheet music for it and all the video links, and it's like, man, when's the last time I had an artist do that? Right? Give me like the fake book for the chords, right? Everything else and all the lyric sheets, like. And then I started to think, because I'm still one of those people who's dumb enough to buy CDs and vinyl and so on. I thought, well, what is my attachment to that? And it's not a technical thing, right? I've heard all the arguments, and I don't want to hear them anymore about how about how vinyl is better than CD. That's total BS. We want to talk about just pure signal to noise ratio, right? Let's start there. Let's talk about wow and flutter, But what people are missing the point of is that that's not the place to have the argument. The place to have the argument is what can you do with an analog thing that you cannot do digitally? Otherwise, why are you making something analog, right? For one, I get really beautiful artwork out of vinyl, and I didn't get that out of CDs, right? Because it shrunk everything. Every so often there was a CD like David Byrne and Brian Eno's "Everything That Happens Today," where it's like a triple gatefold thing, which is beautiful and has the train on the top and it moves around. That's pretty dope. But for CDs, that's the pinnacle. Most of them aren't that good. But the vinyl, yeah. Opening up Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Brain Salad Surgery for the H.R. Giger thing, and then having the poster inside, or Dead Kennedy's Frankenchrist, or, Ohio Players. Ooh, Ohio Players looks really good at 12 inches, not so good at 3.5 or 5, right? And so
absolutely
keep that stuff going, right?
Every Earth, Wind, and Fire record I ever owned.
Oh yeah,
you can't shrink that down.
Hell yeah. I probably still have Spirit somewhere on a wall in my house, because I love that stuff. And it also helps when people discover music through you accidentally. Right. When they see that on the wall or they see that vinyl and they go, man, what's this? And then they actually have an interest in music that they wouldn't have had if they just relied upon a sort of random algorithm to show it to them. The random algorithm will show them certain things, but it won't give you the sort of personal touch I think that we still need from human beings. And again, that's back to the point of what you and I think curatorship should be, right? Like if I wanted a real algorithm that really did the thing for me, it would have a couple of different qualities. The first, however, it would have to be completely under my own control rather than somebody else's. I don't want somebody else telling me what I'm interested in when I'm perfectly willing to tell you. Right. My taste should trump your commercial payout. The second thing is I want that algorithm to be like a surrogate for my record store clerk, the person who's known me for a long time and who knows that I will just every so often pick up something completely, utterly unexpected because of their recommendation. And you want to have that kind of a bond. It's difficult to have that bond, obviously, with an artificial intelligence, or more accurately, a large language, GPT model. But if it were to have a quality of recommending me things, that's what I would want. Instead, I'm going to side with human beings on that one. Right? I'm going to side with human beings and think that they're a way better introduction to music than any random nonsense out there. And I know all the people out there under 30 are like going, oh, dude, this guy's soul. It's like, no, seriously. Because if I tune into, Pandora or Spotify's, or something like that, and I look at people's lists, like, maybe 30% of that stuff is relevant within my own alleged interest. I happen to like an awful lot of German art music from the 70s, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to listen to freaking Dark Side of the Moon because I hate that album. It doesn't mean I'm going to listen to Yes is Fragile because I hate that album. Right. And it's the things that they have combined commercially together in order to say, well, these are familiar things. Like, no. Those aren't me. I want the thing that does it for me, and that's what the record store clerk used to do, right? And that's what I want the curator on the Free Music Archive or on Jamendo or any other platform. I want them to be that for me. Like, hey, I know you're interested in Creative Commons jazz. Here's a bunch of Creative Commons jazz of different sorts. Tell me what you like. Okay. And then let me weed it out, right? Let me put in my input and say, well, that's cool. Oh, God, that sounds like Kenny G on a bad day. Oh, okay, that's cool. Oh, this is pretty abstract, and this is something that I would really, really like. Maybe I'd have to play this after 8 p.m., but I still dig this, right? So everything has a kind of connotation to it and a context for it that I supply. And that's the thing that's missing for most of our curatorship is there's just no context supplied.
Right. Particularly once the algorithms get involved, because then it's the precedence of taking matters of what else is out there and what else appeals to me musically, and then handing that question over to that which has a flat line rather than a heartbeat.
So true.
So, I mean, there's a reason why Shazam can't tell you everything. There's a reason why it'll give you it'll give you complete answers for every 5 things that you get it, and then that 6th thing that you give it is just looks back at you like, yeah, I got nothing. I've got nothing. Because physical media still matters.
Yeah.
The physical and the tangible are still those things that matter. Every year we get some sort of recording from an artist, a tried and true artist, an absolutely revered artist. We're still getting James Brown songs we'd never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Alice Coltrane live at Carnegie Hall concert that never got released that's about to drop on us through Impulse. Like, those things still happen.
And they should.
That's amazing to me.
Well, that's the beauty of discovery, right? And a kind of semi-random discovery, in that sense, that isn't just because it happened to be on, but just because a bunch of people cared enough to recover it. And so it's already motivated by passion and love for music rather than it being motivated by having to fill the next 5 minutes of airtime with something.
Right.
And that's the human touch. I want the difficulty I've had with Net Label Day on the most basic level is, damn, I have a lot of music coming at me every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is it's not nearly enough. And I know that sounds bizarre because it's 7-8 gigs of music, 15-17 gigs of music, I think, last year. And that seems like, oh man, it would take you 65 days, according to my playlist, to listen to all that. Like, yeah, but I've got 65 days. I plan on living a lot longer than 2 months. I plan on living a long time. So I'm going to listen to as much of this as I can, right? And find the things that interest me and listen to them more, the same way that you would have at any other time in history. And I don't think that there should ever be a plea for less art. That's kind of the dumbest thing ever. And I've heard an awful lot of that in the digital world. Oh, we need less art. It's like, no, we don't need less art. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the stakes. We might need less interference between us and our art. We might need less corporate manipulation of art. We might need less unfinished stuff that really isn't ready, posing as full-fledged art. Maybe, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about keeping the fire and the creativity of every single human being on the planet alive, and whatever artistic venture they happen to choose, even if it's scribbling on a placemat, that's not too much. That's just right. Too much in that case is always just right. As long as people are being creative and happy and healthy, and we can generate more creativity and more happiness and more joy out of them, how are we losing in this? We don't.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's just that sometimes we struggle to make sure that we are speaking into the lives of people in such a way that remind them that there are ways in which we can spend our time in regards to where we focus. And so many times in terms of the social media platforms that we engage in, the bend seems to be to focus on the thing that people despise or the thing that they hate. And that falls over into pop culture and into music. And simply reminding people that the more time that's spent championing the work that they love is less time spent complaining about the stuff that they hate.
Yes.
It's a really simple thing.
Yeah. I've been in my second identity. I've been a theater critic for about 32 years now, strange as that may sound. And I used to review 220, 230 plays a season. That's an awful lot of work. And I'm going out to the theater 3 times a day sometimes, where I'd see a kids production at 10 a.m. and then I'd see a lunchtime matinee at 2, and then I'd see an evening show at 7, and then it was a late night improv at 11 or midnight, right? I had weekends
Wow.
like that were pretty steady. And I got to a point where I said, well, how do I determine what to write about? And it dawned on me that the obvious choice is the best. And the obvious choice is write about the things you like.
Mhm.
Why waste time writing about things you hate? Somebody else will cover that for you. And if it's anywhere important, it will come back, right?
Yep.
Somebody else will point out its importance to you. Like, like W.H. Auden's essay on reading, right? There are only 6 things a critic can do for you. And one of them is to point out works that you may have improperly evaluated at first, right? Which is cool. That means you don't have to be right the very first time you hear something or see something or do something, or behold something. It's like your attitude can change, but you can also have something pointed out to you that wasn't immediately obvious that is more obvious to somebody else because their vision of it is clearer for whatever reason, not because they're smarter or whatever, but because they happen to have that experience, because they happen to like that, because they're driven toward that more than you are. And I love learning from people who have completely different taste from me for that reason. And I want to be that person to others, right? I want to be the person who has taste that may not be theirs, but is perfectly clear about what I like and perfectly clear about how I think about the things that I like, because that's where the discussion is. It's not about fundamentally whether I like or dislike something. And that's the first thing that you kind of have to learn. The most important thing is what creates thought, what creates emotion, what gives me joy, what keeps me going through life, Sometimes, yeah, you can get a cheap sort of high out of being enraged about something, but man, that energy doesn't last long, and eventually that turns into vinegar pretty quick, right? You don't
Yes,
want
sir.
that stuff circulating through your veins. And it's so
Mhm.
much nicer and so much easier just to talk about the things that you care about and to tend to those things that you care about. Not because you don't care about anything else, but because this is your thing right now, and this is the thing that's in front of you.
And the thing that you're into right now may not necessarily be the thing that you were into 5, 7, 10, 15 years ago.
Oh,
I can
goodness, no.
think about those songs that I heard 10, 15 years ago that I was just like, I dig this, but I'm not entirely sure why.
Mm.
And then a decade goes by. And for whatever reason, I'm like, you know what? Let me listen to this again. And it hits me completely and totally different. It meets me right where I am at that point. And maybe 10 years ago, my entire being just wasn't ready to receive it. It
Yeah.
wanted to, but maybe something else rhythmically, some other harmony, some other cluster of melodies was pulling on my spirit and had a hold of me then
Mm.
in a way that I couldn't get with this other thing at that time. But 10 years down the road, I'm there. I finally met up with what that particular piece of music was trying to tell me 10 years prior. So I tell people all the time, I don't find music, it finds me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that right there is exactly the thing that does not come up in an algorithm, right?
Mhm.
The algorithm never ever tells you, "Hey, you're going to like this piece in 5 years," because it can't, right? How could it?
Right.
But again, if you have your friendly neighborhood record store clerk, they can come up to you and go, "Well, give this a chance. Listen to it a couple of times. I know it's going to be a little bit unfamiliar to you at first, but I think you'll really like it once you get into it." And 9 times out of 10, my record store clerk is right on things like that. Because you're not always ready for whatever an artist has to offer for whatever reason. Sometimes you just happen
Mhm.
to have a bad day and you associate, that terrible song with that bad day that you're having. It's not the
Yep.
song, it's your network of emotional association. And you can't mistake your network of emotional association for what the artist was giving you. right? That was you creating that in given a spur by the artist, yes, but I tend to think that they didn't intend for you to have an awful day, right? They didn't make you have a miserable day just so that you could hear their song right then and hate it. That seems kind of absurd.
Hmm.
And I think we don't give ourselves nearly enough time to appreciate things. And that's the difficulty also of being online, is that there's so much stuff to sift through. There's so much data, not information, just raw, pure data that's unsorted, completely uncategorized, completely free of context, and it's burying you, and it completely annihilates your senses at a certain point, to where, like old McLuhan said, all you can do is resort to pattern recognition, which is effective for a little bit. But in your pattern recognition, you're going to miss an awful lot of things that are pure genius. And you want to preserve those things, and you want to have the opportunity to preserve those things. And I think one of our curatorial duties toward the commons is kind of one of the things that I do with the Sunday comics in the Seattle Star. I go back into the past, so to speak, and I purposefully look for old comics on websites that no longer exist, where they've shut down, but the comics were brilliant, or the artist had brilliant things to say, but they didn't feel like continuing it for whatever reason. And I feel it's kind of like a moral obligation and a social duty to make sure that brilliant work doesn't vanish. And that's another one of the things that a curator or a critic can do for you, is to make sure that the past does not get forgotten simply because it's no longer the present.
Right.
And I really wish we had more of that with the demo scene and the net label scene and music scene in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we reduce it all to commerce, Doug and I have had this out, of course, we reduce it all to commerce. We all know that only about 7% of all that stuff ever makes money after 3 years, right? The long tail is a real thing. We know this to be true. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have value simply because it's not making money hand over fist for Bertelsmann, or for whoever else happens to be in that chain. Those things still have value. And preserving their value is extremely important if we're going to start talking about something called the commons, because the commons is the repository of our cultural value in many ways.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I've tried to get across to people who may be new to the space, in terms of how I'm finding the music that I'm finding. It's really just a matter of taking the voracious admiration of wanting to find something that I didn't know before whenever I'm in a record shop crate digging, and take that same crate digging philosophy to some of these online resources, because I just feel like there's a blue note of the CC music world. I just don't know it yet. There's a Warp Records of the CC music world. I feel like Black Sonic could possibly be the Stone's Throw of the CC music world. And quite frankly, the silent partner is its Mad Lib.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy.
I mean, it's here, in this area that we've chose to explore, that represents, for lack of a better term, under the underground. There are all these things that we can kind of tie back to these tangible physical media form indie labels and other types. But we just have to find them. And I think we find them as a community, because each member of the community is going to have that little corner of CC music that they hang out in. And then there are some other things that we all know about. So that all becomes our commonplace within the commons, right? But there are these other things that we grab from these other places that we as individuals like spending time in. So we meet up with each other and trade up every once in a while.
Yeah, we just need to do that more often, and with a little more purpose, I think. One of the problems of getting old is that we stop acting like there's urgency in things. And there is an awful lot of urgency in certain things. There's maybe not as much urgency as we thought when we were 13, and of course the world ended tomorrow, right? But there's still urgency in things. And there's a particular urgency in our culture and in our community to, without getting too political just yet, right? If I'm not political enough already, there's an urgency to preserve that which is important beyond purely commercial concerns, because that's the first stuff that's going to die. That's the first stuff that's going to be swept away when there's the great broom of capitalism and goes, oh, well, this only sold 1,600 units when Taylor Swift is, blah, 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 right? Like, yeah, but those 1,600 units were all given to a bunch of really brilliant artists, and 900 of them went on to have careers. Does that mean all of a sudden those 1,600 units are unimportant? No, it doesn't. It means that they're extremely important, and you never know what 1,600 units are going to be really crucial. And so we have to remind ourselves, hey, don't let that stuff die. Don't let it go away, and don't let it be devalued simply because people have no other language for music right now other than capitalist trade. Because that's not what it's about. When I go to a show and I'm watching LP in some dungeon in Seattle and he's with Mr. Liff and RJD2, I didn't go there because I knew that 23 years later that he would be winning a goddamn Grammy, right? That wasn't on my mind. I went because I wanted to enjoy an evening with a really gifted artist. And their work is really important. And it turns out, oh, look, now that Killer Mike's in his 50s, somebody agrees with me. Oh, how long did that take? Right. But even if we don't get our props, like Mike finally did, or take your pick of any musician here, even if we don't get our props from the big establishment, that might be because we have nothing to say to the establishment. That might be because we don't care about the establishment and in fact have other things to say that don't neatly fit in their context. That doesn't make those things less important. In fact, I would argue that it makes them more important. And so that's the stuff that we have to say to ourselves, oh man, if this website goes away before I record la-di-da-di-da-di-da and archive la-di-da-di-da, we'll never, ever, ever get it back. And it will be totally my fault. And I think that all of us as curators have to feel that a lot more strongly than we do. We act like it's going to go on forever, and we know it's not.
We echo Rhino's rallying cry: support people, people.
Yep. Support people, people. It's the most important thing there is, because people matter. Indeed. I had a student say something extraordinarily strange to me, and I had to resist the urge to be glib and actually answer his question. And what he said to me was, well, if we can use a computer to make every sound, why do people play instruments? And I said, I mean, I've got lots of old man rhetoric right here, but the simple thing is, well, we've got cameras. I can take any picture of food. Why would you want to eat anything? And that was my response, right? And then all of a sudden it clicked that the seeing of the thing, the having the thing done, is not the same thing. It's a completely different level. Like, yeah. And you could just as easily say, well, yeah, you could dick around on an 808 and just boom, 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 but that doesn't make you Curtis Mantronic. That doesn't make you Grandmaster Flash. You still have to dedicate yourself to making that sound. The same way that people are dedicating themselves to this particular way of making a sound. The computer's not going to do your music for you. It's just the tool. And with my little Zen koan, I think he understood what I was talking about with that, and didn't ask the question any further, so to speak, and began a new appreciation for the fact that this is physical and that these are human beings who are working extremely hard on what they have to do. That doesn't mean that you can't work hard on electronic music. Of course you can. You know, in fact, I wish people would work a little harder on their electronic music, right? I kind of miss some of the bad old days, because there are no good old days, right? There, those don't exist. But I kind of miss in the bad old days when you had somebody like Anita Lockwood had to program the computer just to produce the sound before she could compose the piece, because it was deadly serious to her to complete that entire process. Now there's an ease to it. Oh, here's a phase quantizer in my little VST plugin. Bam, like, yeah, it's nice to have the tools, but you still, as an artist, you have to do the thing. And the thing is, in every art, doesn't matter what it is, the thing that art is I need a frame. I need to choose restrictions. I need to choose tools. I need to choose an area where I'm going to concentrate, and the rest has to fade. The rest has to go away until I'm done working on this. And the problem of having way too many options is you feel like you're missing out on something by not including them. No, you're not. You're actually doing the thing that you need to do, which is hard work.
It requires us to be in the moment. Being in the moment as opposed to constantly wanting to capture a moment.
Ah, bingo. Yeah. Everything is got a recording metaphor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole problem with, I wouldn't say too much vision, I would say too much unfocused vision, right? Where everything has to be a video. It can't even be a still picture anymore. And a still picture was probably too much. We like to say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but the reality is that's not true most of the time. A picture can be used to illustrate 1,000 different words. Yes, that is true. But those words may have zero to do with the actual picture, as we've seen in many lawsuits over the years, where people's photographs wind up getting used in, like the Douaneau picture that's used to prove that Parisians were alcoholics, or that, one of the pictures that was used in a Parisian bar to talk about the sex trade. Like, yeah, well, if I was the artist, I might take an objection to that too, because that's not even vaguely what he was after. That doesn't mean that the picture told you the truth. The picture didn't tell you jack. The text told you what it wanted to do, and the picture was its hammer to drive a falsehood into you. And as we get closer and closer to the world of instantaneous deep fakes, that gets to be the stuff that we have to sort out.
Yeah. AI for righteousness' sake. Can somebody please get on that?
Yeah, I'm down. That's where your artists need to turn, right? Is they need to turn to the stuff that's dangerous to us. And I don't mean it's dangerous simply because it's technology. Technology is technology, right?
Right.
But I think anybody who also understands the history of technology knows that most technology is initially used for the dumbest purposes ever, or for the most malicious purposes ever, right? We have USB cameras that are the very thing that you and I are using to communicate right now. Why? Well, because somebody got tired of walking downstairs to see if there was coffee in the Trojan room, so he devised a camera that would report back to his computer whether or not there was anything in the coffee pot. That's the world's dumbest reason in a lot of ways, but hey, now it's a piece of technology that's on almost every single person's computer, and certainly every person's phone in the world.
Right.
So is it good? Is it bad? That's not the issue. The issue is what it gets used for after the initial thing. So if we allow our artists to use those tools and to take on the challenges, I think, of things like large language models, and things like this, to question them, not brainlessly because they're replacing artists or any of that kind of nonsense, not simply as a critique of capitalism, because honestly, capitalism doesn't need a whole lot more critique right now. It needs a lot more clear reaction, and a lot more clear of a path in that sense. And the critique isn't doing it. It's the action part where we're stuck there. But initially, when a technology first becomes big, that's when we need the critique. That's when we need somebody to say, okay, wait, maybe dial this back a little bit. maybe self-driving trucks replacing the entire industry of automobile transport is maybe not the best idea in the world because of all of the bad things that happen, right? And we need but we don't just need scientists doing that work, we need artists doing that work and showing us those kind of consequences, right? And showing us the kind of world that we create. Sometimes that's a sort of science fiction, other times it's very, very basic storytelling where it's, hey, I went down to the store and the entire store was run by AI. So I gathered up my groceries and I left and I didn't pay. Right. It's got to be something like that. You can do it as a joke because people who tell jokes can be artists too. Right. But there has to be something to sort of arrest the automatic process where we just inherently accept any kind of technology just because it's there. Oh, it's available. Oh, let's try DALL-E. Yeah, nothing bad could happen with DALL-E. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, we've got, celebrity deepfakes. Who knew that was coming? God, I couldn't have figured that out. Right? But it's our artists who are letting us down on things like that because they're the ones who should have told us 3 years ago, oh, yeah, this is going to be a bad idea. In fact, let me give you a thought experiment and a visual of exactly what a bad idea this is going to be. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I wanted. Make it clear, make it non-theoretical. And that's the thing that I love about art is it precedes theory, right? We've got way too much theorizing right now. We don't have the stuff that precedes it. And so I want the artist to do a little more work in that sense. You know how it is. Let's play some music, man. These guys are probably getting tired of our voices.
Yeah.
As much as we love them. Right. I'm down. What you got on the platter?
You know what? Let's go with there is a heavy, jangly guitar rockin' video that I came across in the CC video playlist. Plus, I just love the structure of the video itself. Shrek versus RoboCop by Miki.
Yes.
This is a really this was a fun one. Plus, like I said, the way that this video is structured, I really adored this. So let's go with that.
What a shame.
adore that. That video is just phenomenal to me. I love it. Eventually, there we go. More actions. Stop video. There it is. Why that video feels adjacent to Harmony Korine's Gummo, I don't know, but it does. Maybe that's what was, maybe that's what was happening in the next town over from wherever Gummo took place. You may be on mute, sir.
That's okay. They didn't want to hear me anyway. I'm good. Yeah. Wow. So, since we have the brown people contingent like running the show today, let's talk smack.
World star.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna tell you another thing that drives me nuts during that label day. I got enough problems dealing with 5 different continents, and dealing with African music is, oh my God. And it's exasperating, not because I don't like the music. It's exasperating because it makes you very clear about exactly what's wrong with international copyright law. Mostly Africans ignore it, period. And quite honestly, they should. Why? Right? It's like it's back to the pre-1976 days in the United States every time I deal with Africa. And I say that because the thing was, before 1976, you had to enter into the copyright world, right? You had to write out forms that said, hey, I want to belong to this big nonsensical capitalist network on the speculation that I'm going to be one of those 7%. Fine. If you enter it voluntarily, that's on you. No big deal. But if you don't, and we're just making music and we're just trading tunes, why are you in our biz? Right? And I think that's the way an awful lot of people in Asia and Africa feel every single time they're faced with like the TPP or another awful trade agreement that breaks the legality and the free use, as Lessig would say, of things that they do normally. Because when I was in Africa, man, everybody had tapes of everything. Right. And the radio was on everywhere. It didn't matter if it was a public place where people didn't get royalties or any of that kind of BMG garbage. It was like, yeah, no, this is music. This is something that exists in our environment, and we'll tell you when we think it needs to be taken over by capitalists. And so they keep that attitude really, really well. The problem, of course, is working with CC, which is, of course, a copyright-based organization. I've got to talk to a bunch of people in Uganda or Kenya or Nigeria or Cote d'Ivoire or something and go, well, I know you don't care, but can I get you to put a license on this? Because if you don't put a license on it, then the default in the United States is that I can't play it. And they look at me like it's the strangest thing in the world, because it is to them. It's not part of their life. It's not part of their experience. And we don't realize how much that nonsense has got its tendrils in us Americans every single day. It's like we're one of those one of the creatures in that Outer Limits episodes of The Invisibles, right? That just lands on your back and crawls underneath your suit and forces you into all these horrible business decisions, right? And I get that vision every single time I talk with people in Malaysia or, Indonesia or India or anywhere in the African continent, with the exception to some extent of South Africa, where they kind of get what I'm saying because there's enough European poison still in their soil that they understand it, But it doesn't mean that we don't want African or Asian music represented. I really, really do. And I've tried over and over and over, but it's extremely difficult to get their participation, precisely because of this dynamic and because history is against me, right? Their history is no copyright on anything. And even if there was a copyright, we're just going to ignore it, which I approve of 90% of the time. The 10% I don't approve of it is when I personally have a stake in it like this. So for y'all out there in Asia and Africa, please send me things for Net Label Day, and we'll just put a fake copyright license on it if you want to, or we'll just say it's public domain, whatever the hell that means in whatever country you're in, right? Because I really, really want your stuff. And I don't have nearly enough stuff. I've got an awful lot of work from Europe. I've got an awful lot of work from South America, North America, a little bit of work from Australia, piece here or there from Japan, and zero from the two largest countries in the world, which is mind-boggling to me. Yeah, I got nothing from China or India. I've tried. Oh, that's not true. I have Jazz Goa. That's the one thing I have from India.
Okay.
But I'm working, so hit me up, holla. And now I'm gonna talk smack about us Americans. Right. So this is what I'm going to say, and this is going to be short because I've said it before. The tradition of African American music is that all of our music is based on quotation, period. Do not argue this with me. You will lose. Everything comes from something else. We have always built on our ancestors' music, every single genre. Now that I've made that clear, if it's all based on quotation and it's all based on other people's work, why aren't you letting people use your work? Knock it off. End of sentence. There. That'll make me more popular with the brown folks of the country. So good.
So especially in terms of where our focus is, where the commons is concerned, in other words, why a no derivatives license?
I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
Why indeed? Right? Because that is the question.
Right.
That is very much the question. I understand that we all put in really long hours and we put in really hard work becoming really good artists, and we don't want somebody, I'm going to put this in air quotes so that it looks as stupid as it sounds, we don't want somebody stealing our work. But as has been expertly explained by many people, if your work still exists, then it hasn't been stolen. It may have been borrowed, may have been used for an inspiration, but that's a different conversation. It's not stealing as such. That crap only works if you're Lars Ulrich, and that's because he's a moron. Okay. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help other people get through life. We're trying to make life easier for everybody, even for a knucklehead like Lars Ulrich, for Pete's sake, right? So the more access we allow to our work under reasonable conditions, the easier it is. And I know you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll bump into Chuck D and he'll let me use this song because I asked him and because he likes me. It's like, I'm sure Chuck would, having talked to Chuck a few times in my day, but how often are you going to bump into Chuck? That's why Chuck uses a license, right? It's like, here's an easy global license that you can understand. Yeah, go ahead and riff off my stuff. Go ahead and build all the samples you want. But if you sign a contract with Universal Music, maybe we need to renegotiate this. And it might simply be because I hate Universal Music. It's not because I don't want you to make money. It might be just because I don't like the people you deal with. That's his prerogative, But I think our default needs to be open. And especially as brown folks in the United States, goodness gracious, our default needs to be open for so many reasons, because it's the categorical rejection of 400 years of oppression that we've suffered economically in this country is to be open, is to not be owned, right? And not to have our things immediately entered into this slave market mentality that we always have to fight. And that stuff gets old, Yeah, sure, you're going to wind up every so often with a story where, Big Bank Hank goes to Grandmaster Caz and said, yo, dude, can I borrow a couple of your rhymes? They want to record this album. And it turns out Caz doesn't get credited, and it becomes one of the greatest hits of the 70s, right?
Right.
But how often does that happen? And then afterwards, Hank said, oh, yeah, I got it from Caz. That didn't get into, Vibe magazine, right? But it's not that he didn't credit him. He did.
Mm-hmm.
If we can make that crediting process more explicit and faster and easier for you so that there's no questions about this, tell us how. We'll work on that. We want it to be easy. We want to hear music, and we want other people to hear your music. But we don't want other people to have to do a tribal dance in order to do it. We want it to be simple, the way that it was originally simple. I used to go down to clubs and hear people battling it out. I went, okay, I'm into this. And if I recorded it, which of course I did on my crummy ass, a little cassette recorder, I didn't have a bouncer come up to me and tell me I couldn't. I didn't have anybody from the band say that I couldn't. In fact, the band would say, hey, man, you recorded us last week. None of us got a copy of that. Can you drop it on us? And I said, sure. Of course I did. Because that stuff is important. And that's what sharing is all about, is making sure that stuff doesn't get lost. Right? The brand new James Brown. The brand new stereo Duke Ellington, because somebody accidentally recorded mono and two different microphones at the same time, and they finally decided to channel it together. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. But that should not be lost. And too much of African-American culture gets lost anyway. We ought to be ashamed for letting it happen the way that it does. So that's me. Here's my soapbox. There. Okay.
I mean, it's bad enough. It's bad enough that our culture gets sold back to us sometimes at an import rate. That's happened way too many times.
Yeah, aren't we tired of that? I mean, just imagine, because I played in I don't know how many funk and jazz bands throughout my youth, right? Until I got sick of touring. What if I had to ask written permission to use a riff every single time I was on stage? You know how long that would take me? None of us would ever play anything, because again, it's all about quotation. And in fact, one of the bases of hip hop is totally about quotation. I mean, almost exact categorical quotation. But because we let Gilbert O'Sullivan's music company, not Gilbert himself, but his music company, decide, oh, well, that's theft. All of a sudden, we've got some of the most ridiculously planned hip hop that's all completely filtered out. There are no quotations. It's all computer generated. And we have some stuff that is so embarrassing to me that I can't stand to listen to it. It's like, oh, dude, please give me a sample. Just anything to tell me that you belong to us, right? Anything to tell me that you're one of us instead of this thing that's been promoted by WEA, right? in this face that's been put on an album because they think that this is what college white kids are going to buy this week. I'm sick of that nonsense. And the more we contribute to it, the less power we have. We don't get rich off it. One or two of us might. but that just goes to show you exactly how bad it is for the other 12 million of us. You know, the default of jazz and hip hop should be a sharing license, period. There's no reason why that should not be the case. Anyway, how often are you going to play that jazz riff again? Right? Where's the copyright? You're not going to play it like that again. That's the whole point of playing jazz. So why? No. Right. And yet those are the two things that I have the hardest time getting into Net Label Day. Those genres are sadly underrepresented because of all of our nonsensical beliefs about copyright, and they shouldn't be. They should be the first. I want to hear folk music first because folk music, and that includes the blues, right? That includes all folk music from all around the world, all traditional songs, that stuff. No, that should be immediately accessible to people, period. Anything that's built on quotation should be immediately in the commons because that's where it came from, and that's what keeps the commons alive, is people saying, yeah, this is where I got this. You can do this too. Because you inspire other people to do it. And yeah, why would that not be the default? Why would you not want people to do that? Okay. I'm getting on my soapbox again, but not too high this time. But yeah, that's just those are the things that I deal with all the time when I'm writing people who've never heard about Net Label Day, even though it's been around for, almost 10 years now, right? Like, so explain this Creative Commons license to me. Well, it's very simple. And I think we need a simple pitch to tell people. My simple pitch is basically it allows people to listen to your music and send it to somebody else who might also want to listen to your music. And then the other conditions are up to you, right? If you are going to piss and moan if they put it on an anthology, a mixtape, then go ahead and put an NC/ND on it. I don't care. That's up to you. But nevertheless, you should at least have your original piece able to be heard and able to be distributed so that other people can at least know what you're doing. I think that's simple enough. I understand why an awful lot of artists use the non-commercial, and yeah, I get it. Although I heard a really interesting version of that from my friend who said the reason that he uses the non-commercial license isn't because he's worried about people selling his books. It's because he wants to ensure that his books don't get sold. It's a completely different attitude, right? It's like he's not worried about somebody else making money off of his books. He's like, no, I want to make sure that these are always free of charge as well as free. And I thought, okay, that's something that nobody had ever said to me before, but it became very clear that that's also an option with the CCN, by NC license. And so I respect that. I respect all of those decisions. I respect the NC/ND too. Do what you're going to do, but make it easy, much easier for people to get into your work. That's what we all want. And what's the problem with being heard anyway? You don't want to not be heard. So why not make it as easy to be heard as possible under the circumstances, right? Over to you, Dan and Kathy.
Our cultures are remix cultures.
Yep.
Particularly simply in terms of living this life, which is sometimes, an absurdist tragic comedy in the supposed land of the free and the home of the brave. We are continuously remixing the absurd into a way in which our lives can be somewhat more palatable and still have a sense of being able to thrive in this nation and in the world, given what we have been through, particularly in terms of this nation. We remix trauma into triumph. We remix adversity into our own stories of, making something out of nothing. We continuously make something out of nothing. And that's living life as remix culture. how we transform that into our own representation as founders, the comments are concerned, I think it's a much deeper conversation. Probably one we can't get into right now, but maybe part two.
Yeah, part 3 maybe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This has been incredible, dude. I've been wanting to talk with you ever since Doug mentioned your name last year, and I had him on my podcast for a two-parter just prior to Net Label Day of 2023 going down. So this has been long in the making, and I am extremely thankful that it happened within this fashion, even with tech teching, even with all the things that tend to happen with bandwidth and performance settings and all those other things. I'm extremely thankful that we could have this one-on-one together in Doug's absence, and I just wanted to thank you for making yourself available to chop it up with me a little bit and talk about life and music and share some videos back and forth. And I'm thankful that you are one of the newfound friends that I have found within the CC music community.
Dang, putting all the responsibility on me now, man. Hey, I'm all about solidarity, and there's an old, partially apocryphal quote from Che Guevara, but I got it from Augusto Boal, so I trust Augusto for a lot of reasons. And Augusto's version of Che's quote was very simple about solidarity. He said, "Solidarity means running the same risk." And I have always sat with that because there's so much depth to actually doing the same things that other people do, to being just as exposed as they are, to being just as open as they are, to being just as powerless as they are, if that's what it takes. To give up all of your standing, and even more, to give up your ego, to sit with another person and to be in their presence and to be exactly like them and share the same goal. There's a power in that that's absolutely awe-inspiring in the realest sense of that word. And that's the kind of thing we don't have nearly enough of in any of our lives. That's what community is for. We want to pull people together with that kind of solidarity, not because we have the same goals all the time, because we don't always, but because we have the same context, right? We come from the same cloth, and we all do have, I think, one desire in common for our communities, which is we want this to be our home. We want this to be the thing that helps us to grow, and we want all of the things that are best for it. We may disagree on what those things are, but we can't question that everybody in our community wants what's best for us. We can talk to them about what those things are individually. That's a different conversation. But riding alongside each other and going, yeah, of course I want this. Of course I want to look good. Of course I want us to do the right thing. Of course I want us to be not complicit in somebody else's demise, right? Of course I want us to be not morally reprehensible. Of course I want us to be capable and actionable to do the right things in life, so that everybody around me shares in the joy of being alive, and the wonder of being alive, and the uniqueness of being in this place and this time right here, right now, with these people. That doesn't mean that we don't leave our homes. Obviously, we leave our homes every day. Many of us travel, but we don't want to be told that we have to, right? We don't want to be told that all of the stuff that's good for us is somewhere else. We don't want to be told that all of the things that are right for us need to be given to us by someone from outside. We don't want to be told that well, if you don't like it here, why don't you just move? It's like, I don't move, Jigga, because this is my home and has been for 7 generations. What's your problem? Not mine.
Right.
This is where I live, damn it. And why should my home be worse than yours? And on the flip side, why should yours be worse than mine? Why can't we lift your community up? Why can't we pull us together? Why can't we all get closer? And I don't think that there's any good reason why those things can't happen and shouldn't happen. We just have to try a little harder, and we have to be a little clearer. And we have to deal with the suspicion of centuries, right, of people who have been mistreated and who have been routinely reamed and stretched and destroyed as much as people can possibly destroy them. We have to deal with that. I understand that's hard. And I understand that everybody finds a new oppression every single day because it's not new. It was actually always there. It was just under the surface, not being talked about, right? And I understand that's the deal. Now, that's so much of what drives identity politics. It's not that it didn't exist. It's that, oh, all of a sudden there's a window that opened where this could be discussed. And so now this is the time that it has to be discussed. And we want to pull all those things together. We don't want people to say, hey, I'm a left-handed, Marx reading anarchist who sides with Gramsci, but still listens to Marion Brown's ECM recordings and prefers them to Blue Note, while also reading Houston Person and Audre Lorde instead of reading Polly Marshall or Robert Hayden, right? We don't need that much specificity in our lives. All that stuff is just for us. And it's a story that we tell ourselves about who we are. It doesn't matter to anybody else because nobody else has to live this. We got to live it. The things that do matter to everybody else are, hey, how are you living with me? How can we live together? How can we get to the place that we both want to go? Or how can we avoid going to the place that both of us know we're going if we don't change something? Right. So, I mean, fundamentally, I'm an optimist about it because there's no reason not to be.
Something tells me people are going to want to find you and follow you to get more of these nuggets. After the benediction is said and all hearts and minds are clear.
Thank you for our Sunday prayer meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just a couple hours removed from Sunday morning, but I feel the spirit.
Oh yeah. I might be rolling on the floor in front of the pew anytime soon, right about now. Holy Spirit, come down. No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm easy to find. Usually, you just look for my name and I pop up. Poof, Omar Willie. If you can pronounce it, you can spell it, right? I'm on all the things. I've been published in the Seattle Star, which is, of course, is all Creative Commons licensed work. Just wrote a review for it, yesterday, in fact. So that's the Seattle, SeattleStar.net. Been there last, goodness grief, 11 years. Ouch. 12 now. Wow, how have I stuck it out 12 years? But I have. So that's always there. You can find me on all the typical social media in different places. If you look for my name too, usually it's like just Omar Willie, because I'm all about branding or whatever they call that nonsense these days. And of course, netlabelday.org, right? That's my other big baby. It's coming up. So yeah, It seems like it's so far in the future, but we all know it's not. It's like, man, it'll be March at the end of this week.
Exactly.
Dang.
Yeah,
so
man.
Holla. Even if you don't like me, holla.
Make sure y'all do. As for me, at BSOTS, BSOTS for both sides of the surface. That's across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as Threads. BSOTS.com, home base for both sides of the surface podcasts. And for those of y'all that might be new, for those of y'all might be checking this out for the first time, if you are in any way, shape, or form passionate about music appreciation, sonic curation, and media preservation, please come around our way and bookmark this page. Friends of CC Music, this is how we're rolling, and I'm sure more will be coming up later on in regards to those who've been nominated, possible runner-up episodes in the future, and let's see what else that our beloved Doug Whitfield has come down the pike in terms of guests. And again, for anybody that's new, just check out some of these episodes that have been uploaded within the past couple of weeks. I think you'll find them quite informative in terms of what gets talked about and the music that gets played. And I think that'll just about do it for Omar and I as far as this takeover is concerned. We will stop this recording so that those who were not a part of this as it was live can check this out in the days, weeks, and months to come. Bless you, Omar. It's been a pleasure, man.
It's one love, brother. One love.
All righty.